The Otomo broke the coalition front line and advanced east, away from the lowlands and into the narrow valleys of the mountains. Here they could easily block coalition counterattacks, but similarly the coalition could easily block them, and several large battles were fought, resulting in the loss of the Takeda main force, and for the Otomo, the loss of rising lord Terada Hisayuki, an old retainer of Yoshiaki himself. With the Otomo weakened after all this fighting, the coalition regrouped and threw everything into one more battle to save the southern high road.
My lord, I'm here. They're upon us already. Hurry up and create a battle line. My men aren't in much condition to fight. We must keep them in reserve. What? You're meant to be bringing the reserve to the fight. Why have you brought so few men? You were too far out. There was no time to muster the main reserves, my lord. Perfect. You arrived just in time, but with so few men that defeat is guaranteed. What a plan you've hatched. It was this or nothing, my lord. There is no plan. I will protect you.
You certainly will. I'll see you trampled into the mud before I get hurt on account of your negligence. Go lose the rest of your men.
Just give me your orders, my lord. Protect the cannons and protect the heir to the shogunate.
Use as many lives as you need. Hello there, welcome back to Barbarian Masters. Right now it's an all versus all fight on the front line as we face a combined Takeda and Imagawa force. The Imagawa army, which is now approaching our right flank, is going to be a bit of trouble because we don't have enough troops to face off against it. So what I'm trying to do is use this cavalry rear attack to sufficiently distract them or even defeat them, so that we don't have to focus much on that. But even despite my best efforts, some units did come to attack our flank. We of course have our forces facing the Takeda mainly because they're coming in with absolutely loads of units and much better units. The Imagawa are mostly just Katana Ashigaru here. On the corner, I'm going to be asking my Portuguese troops to do the difficult task of stopping both the Imagawa and the Takeda at the same time there. Still, not much better for guys here in our centre because the enemy's hand mortars are raining bombs upon our formations. Those hand mortar units are all the way back here, so it's going to be very difficult for us to do anything about that in the near future. There's like 3 lines of enemy infantry between us and them. Kobayakawa is arriving with reinforcements onto Yoshishige's left flank, but our army is completely out of formation since we had to rush up so quickly, and many of the units are in poor condition after recent fights they took part in, so we don't have all that much strength. In the centre, just a huge mess. We're going to be relying on our gunners and archers to shoot through the gaps in the line and gradually deplete the enemy, while our melee units are essentially sacrificed to allow this. Kobayakawa is going to stand and fight right at the front, or where the front now is, since Yoshishige's army was quite easily pushed backwards. Our artillery positions are now under threat, and some of our guns have already been silenced. One of the big problems we'll have in this area is the fact that the enemy have a lot of archers that we don't really have a counter for, since all of our archers are just shooting at point blank range into the units in front of them. So we are going to be subject to a rain of arrows that we can't stop for a while. Fortunately, the enemy chose particular targets that minimised the amount of damage they were doing. They were shooting at our highly armoured units, so it was kind of okay, at least to start off with. We finally got some cav around to deal with those mortars, but as you can see, they were not shying away from using danger close fire with their other unit of mortars to stop us. So we lost half of our cavalry unit in that attack, but I'm sure the enemy took losses as well. Now with all these archers formed up, I'm rushing units forwards to try and engage them before they rain too much damage upon us. But as mentioned, they're firing at units like these Turcos who have such high armour that big volleys don't really do much damage. So while there are lots of high level archers shooting at us, we're not losing many men at the moment, so that's pretty nice. The Imagawa army is just about gone at this stage. Our cavalry attacks have killed lots of their Katana Ashigaru, and our Portuguese pikemen on the corner while being almost totally defeated themselves, killed absolutely loads of Ashigaru during that fight, so they've held on very well, and now Yoshishige is starting to take control of this battle. We're outflanking the enemy on their right, but because we're not really attacking them in the centre anymore, this barely counts as a flank attack. All we're doing is shooting at them with a few half-dead ranged units, and even they are starting to be engaged as well, so we're not making an enormous amount of progress. Still, the battle lines have shifted, and we've got something stable looking over here thanks to Kobayakawa's men, and Yoshishige is there hiding behind them to stay out of danger. In many cases though, it's just archers we've got trying to hold the enemy down, so it's not the best situation. Back towards the centre, the enemy archers have broken through effectively. Everything in front of Kobayakawa is dead, so they can attack us now. These ninjas decide not to attack him, so he was lucky in that case. They instead twist around to attack these gunners who were attacking the Takeda flank. A pretty good move. That's going to be a very juicy attack that kills a whole load of them, although they are only bow ninjas, so they won't do all that well in melee against our veteran samurai troops. Yoshishige himself is just fleeing from the battle now after drawing some attention from the enemy archers. He had to get out of there. So we're starting to win in a very somehow sort of way. Our units are just holding on, half-dead units here and there, defeating enemies, and I think a lot of it is all down to our ranged troops providing so much support from the back that the sacrifice of our initial front line did actually kill loads and loads of the enemy's advancing troops. The enemy chain routes at this point, and that's going to seal the deal. We'll start attacking them as they go away to inflict as many casualties on their reinforcements as possible, but the replay was glitched, so we didn't see the rest of that, but you know where it's going from there. Here is the result. Lots of casualties on our side, including full unit casualties, which you don't get very often, and these are the ones that actually matter because they are permanent losses. So a couple for Yoshishige. Kobayakawa lost a few units as well, with a load more basically dead, so it will be a few turns before he is usable, and plenty of losses among our reinforcement troops, but still enough stuff there to put a couple of armies together properly if we need to in the near future. So the final result of all that is that we can now take another Takeda castle and advance our front line to a nice safe position. First I moved all of the nearly dead units away from the armies because this auto-resolve might be mean and kill them because they're low on strength. So we'll just keep them at the back, take this with a nice easy auto-resolve, and now we'll have a maximum level castle and a river crossing in this region. So it's a nice place to defend, a nice front line for us to establish. And we're going to be staying here for a while, at the very least until we've replenished our forces. You've heard of what happened in Otomo? Yes, my lord. Glories mired by tragedy. Well said. The loss of Terada will weaken our position, but not by enough. At least we still have his thoughtful gifts to remember him by. That aside, these victories represent the end of the struggle for Honshu. We have all we need to retain the mainland for as long as we want. That means it is time to begin our operation. Yes, my lord. Shall I inform your sons? Yes, let Yoshishige know that he may bring as many Nanban troops as he wants. That will, I believe, cause him to gather them all. As you wish, my lord. I agree with your prediction. It will be just what he needs, and what we all need in the end. There is another thing I must tell you. You will be responsible for ensuring everyone makes it to the landing area. That much you know. However, the more important mission is to ensure that everyone who leaves meets the standards expected of the new Japan. I understand. I should also begin preparations in case there are those who disagree with your decision. Yes, there will be. Muster all the ships you can. After a bit of scheming up in the mountains, I managed to break up the Date main force that was coming to bypass us and get their faction leader isolated. So now Kurokawa is going to lead a force teaming up with Noda, our new general, with some reserves to bring him down. We had a pretty big advantage, I thought, but I still had to fight it because the balance bar wasn't good enough, since we need to keep these armies in good condition since the other armies may attack them soon. In this battle, even though the enemy was defending, they decided to rush at us, coming down from their nice hill position. I think just because we had so many archers in our army, they were correctly assessing that if they sat on the hill, we'd probably just shoot them all and they would lose. So they are doing the right thing, I suppose. So a short archery battle ensues where we killed loads of their archers, and then all of their general stuff charges into our general stuff. We might be just about on par in terms of melee units, or number of melee units, but I think ours are generally better, and we can still use all of the millions of range units at the back because the front line was so messy. There were lots of gaps in it, so our archers will still be shooting through those gaps, killing more enemies, and already the announcer is calling this battle a win. One of their generals is caught trying to outflank us on the right here, but we kill them with some spearmen. And the other general, I think, was trying to force his way through the center. There he is, fighting against Naginata samurai. That's of course going to make no progress. And soon the officers are dead, the troops start retreating, realizing they have no hope, which really they didn't from the beginning. And that will be the end of that. We'll slaughter them as they go, but we didn't quite kill all of them as it turns out. We killed almost all of them, but 3 men survived, and among the survivors was the enemy faction leader, funnily enough. So now we have to hunt him down again, and it's actually going to be Daihoji who gets the honour of taking that prestigious head, since the enemy leader did trespass near his castle. So that's the end of that. There are still 2 more Date armies and several more Takeda armies in the valley which we have to worry about. But we're going to consider this front as vaguely stable. I don't think the enemy will be able to get past us here, knowing what they have and what the AI is likely to do. I'm going to block this river crossing since the enemy aren't especially willing, or at least haven't been so far, to attack the castle. So most of our forces will just stop them walking past us so we know we've got safe territory behind, and we'll have Daihoji manning the castle in case a battle does take place there, and having 2 armies beside a castle isn't all that helpful anyway. So this should provide a stable front line where we can now effectively ignore that scenario and focus on what I'm going to be doing next with the campaign, and that requires us to get Yoshishige away from this part of the front line to go off on a quest, a little family gathering. I will be reorganizing the armies today, General. I will provide you with a list of which camp each of your companies should report to, and I expect to find those units ready at those locations by morning. As you wish, my lord. The armies could use a little more order, after all these losses. Oh, that's still your responsibility. The goal is to provide an army worthy of a shogun that can be removed from proceedings here. You're leaving, my lord? Masterfully deduced. A fleet is waiting for me, and as many men as I can drag along with me to go take part in a new campaign. Father's orders. What orders has he left for me? You're in charge. It's his fault if that all goes wrong, so I won't complain. Just don't lose anything. We need a stable realm while this new matter is resolved. And the new matter, my lord? Shikoku and the shogunate. All matters pertaining to both shall be resolved at once. The shogunate. Will Lord Yoshiaki be there? It's a whole family reunion. Sugatsura will be there. I wonder if father slapped some sense into him. For the sake of Japan, I actually hope not, for this will be the perfect chance to show how useless he is. After shifting the emphasis of my defence to that river crossing, the Takeda then decide to test the castle instead, so perhaps a good idea, taking advantage of the now smaller army defending it, and one of the nearby Date armies is going to get involved in this fight, giving the enemy quite the advantage. But we do have the defender's advantage, so just need to see what we can do with it. At the start of the battle, the enemy appeared to be taking a leaf out of the Otomo book. They're using their gunners to shoot my archers from outside of the archers' range. So that's a pretty good idea from them, although in this case it didn't do very much damage. I just waited around for the enemy to start coming inside the castle, and then I used the firebomb throwers to demolish the enemy as they advanced towards the next layer of walls. As you can see, I'm not really using units outside of the walls to block the enemy as they advance. The sacrificial strategy is usually the best one, but just for some variety, we're going to be trying something ever so slightly different by not doing that from the very beginning here. One advantage the enemy have that makes a sacrificial strategy less effective actually is that they have tons of archers, so we need to stay back from those archers as much as possible and try to draw them inside the castle and not have them just stand there shooting us for the whole battle. Eventually I had to send some units out because we were about to be swarmed across the whole of the front of the wall, and indeed those archers just open up on us. We didn't draw them into the castle first, which would allow us to get them into a melee. So now the units on the outside are going to take losses very quickly, but they'll still have to try and do their job. We need to stop the enemy climbing up those smaller interior walls so our archers can remain safe. We've already failed over here because I didn't have enough melee units to actually block the enemy available. The firebomb throwers are doing the suicide tactic of throwing the bombs at their own walls, but fortunately there were no mishaps as we've seen previously. So I had to pull back to let the enemy into the castle a bit, and now their archers are taking another leaf out of that Otomo book and shooting our archers from a safe distance. So they're doing pretty well so far. Our spear samurai here are tanking tons of enemy units at once and allowing our bow samurai to rack up the kills in the hundreds. We'll be losing our samurai, but the enemy will be losing lots and lots of men there, so indeed that is the sacrificial strategy working now that the enemy archers aren't focusing on my men so much. We encountered a rare Shogun glitch in this battle where your men can't garrison walls. This happens from time to time, no idea what causes it. Seems to be some kind of pathfinding issue, because if you leave them they will eventually garrison the wall. It just takes them a very long time to work out how to actually do it, and that's preventing me from using my archers and firebomb throwers to full effect, or using them at all in most cases because they can't fire while they're standing there thinking about where to go. Outside the wall, our samurai are almost depleted, but they've done a very good job of bunching the enemy up, and we've even drawn the enemy archers into melee somehow by just pulling things they were targeting back from the wall, so they follow them while on fire at will and then accidentally climb into the castle. So much of their archery power has been removed by them being committed into the melee accidentally, and now we can fall back yet further to use the couple of units of professional Yari Ashigaru we have to choke point the enemy. The enemy have to go around the castle Tenshu to get to the capture point, so on both sides we put a pike wall, and now we can try and fall back to draw the enemy onto it. I was having some trouble over here because my men were so bogged down in melees they just couldn't escape, and we lost several whole units in that part of the fight, I believe. Eventually though, the enemy did come over to fight the pike wall, and now the advantage will be ours. The weakness of this formation is of course archery, but since the enemy have given up on their archery, this will be fine. You can see much of their bow Ashigaru here just rushing in to fight the pike wall from the front, just what we need, and I don't really know how we ended up with such an ideal scenario. Now I'm going to use these firebomb throwers to really cheekily blow up the enemy formation. That's very dangerous. There was a decent chance they would have just thrown them into our own men, but it was a pretty good volley, hitting mostly the enemy, and that will have inflicted loads of damage. Elsewhere around the castle, various smaller fights are now resolving, generally in our favour, and things from here were okay because the enemy simply couldn't break through those pike walls with the remaining units that they had, and they started to rout all over the place. We were clearing up the enemy's dribs and drabs in other parts of the castle, so now we can use units that are freed up by that to attack the remaining units who are on the other side of the Tenshu here. Actually, it was a tiny bit difficult to attack those units because so much stuff was routing that our pike wall couldn't really form up properly, so eventually we're going to just do a charge out of formation into the back of the remaining enemy troops, and that will be enough to rout them. You can still see though they have plenty of strength on the balance bar. That's just because lots of the enemy's army was chasing my cav around the battle. I never really got a chance to use my cav. They were just running around in a circle around the outside of the map and generally distracting enemy units, which is useful enough. eventually forced the battle to end by taking units outside to take out some of the guys who were hanging out there. They were very unwilling to leave even after the whole army was gone. So there we go, we got a decisive victory. It was pretty messy. It was really just our last few units that allowed us to win, and we did lose, as you see here, many units to achieve this victory. So many sacrificial units were needed to stop such a vast enemy force. The good news is that the remaining Date army doesn't exploit our current weakness by attacking us right now, which I was worried they would, and now we can exploit their weakness by concentrating everything we have in the area together to just attack that force. And we have a decent balance bar, so we'll just auto-resolve that to get rid of this army, to get rid of the survivors from the Takeda force, and broadly speaking, get rid of the threat to this area. There's now not enough stuff directly nearby to threaten us, at least for a couple of turns. We'll just have to see what happens there. Further south, we are, as alluded to, going to be taking Yoshiaki off the front line with many of our best troops to board a fleet and start sailing west for a new party that's going to be starting over at Shikoku, the island we bypassed during our conquests, with the other members of the Otomo family helping out there. So with him gone, we just have to wait for all the ships to arrive before the next phase can begin, but a couple of notable events took place during the wait, one being that Kobayakawa moved forward to defeat the Imagawa clan, using all of our reserves to just overwhelm them in an auto-resolve here, abandoning our defensive line on a river unfortunately, but still taking a new castle that's easy enough to defend by itself. So we'll hold that new front line position, and in the mountain valleys we're going to try and advance up actually to get to a new castle that's more choke pointy. We accidentally ambushed a Takeda army while advancing up. I'm not going to fight that ambush because our reserves weren't taking part in the fight. Then when I tried to get everyone together, more Takeda forces were involved, and generally things weren't enough in our favour to try and break through here. We've already achieved our objective in that we've created a stalemate where the enemy can't really advance against us, and if they do, we'll probably end up with an advantageous battle. So I'm just going to leave that there and try and have our front lines be stable and be quiet so we can focus on our new project over in Shikoku. It is time to change things for the better. Time to complete my vision and make the struggle we have all taken part in worthwhile. The Otomo family has risen above all Japan, dragging the dying land up with it into the light that once shone from distant shores, but now burns of our own volition. I have given you all the gift of a new and powerful shogunate that will ensure order is kept from now on. But it is not only I that must bear this responsibility. In my life, I have seen countless wars, countless battles, and fought alongside countless warriors. After all that, I have come to recognize greatness in a man, be it hidden or clear. That is why we gather for this final test, and my final duty to the clan. Yoshiaki and Sugutsuru will fight the rebels here on this island. Whoever survives, or whoever makes their prowess most clear, must become the next shogun, the shogun who will unify the land once and for all. This is my order to all retainers, samurai, footmen and peasants. The chaos of battle will choose your leader. You need only respect its decision. So the contest for Shikoku and for the shogunate has begun. First, just need to wrap up a couple of items of business elsewhere. We found and destroyed the Honma invasion force that's been escaping us for a while now, so finally that's sorted. And the Takeda decided to make our life easy for us by sending their army led by their new leader to attack lots of our armies at once and lose, obviously. So that's making the balance of power in this valley more easy to manage, and will continue to simply block the enemy's attempts to do anything to keep our front line stable. So the plan is we're going to land a load of armies here in Shikoku, as I've already done. We're going to have Yoshiaki, Uno and some reserves keeping watch over the first castle we've taken, and Yoshishige and Sugatsura will take one army each to see what they can do, going in opposite directions to find and destroy the rebellious clans on the island. At the start of the very next turn though, we get some important news. Yoshishige has just become the shogun. That's because Yoshiaki has died of natural causes just after setting this contest to decide his successor. So nominally it's Yoshishige because he is the oldest son. However, the contest must go on. The decree has already been made. One curiosity of Shogun 2 is that your faction leader's image can't change. So Yoshishige now looks like Yoshiaki. I'll probably still use his old image just to keep things consistent and perhaps less confusing as we go on. So the first action we need to take is to attack this Miyoshi army that had come over to investigate our little landing force. So it's time for a one-on-one battle. Yoshishige versus a whole load of officers and some low quality troops, lots of drafted Ashigaru there, that somehow managed to hold their own on the balance bar, so I had to fight this one manually. Now the two armies deployed quite close to each other and the enemy had mangonels, so first I fired the cannons at them, trying to take them out. I managed to destroy one of the pieces, but the rest will be able to continue firing at us, and they're targeting Yoshishige, which is actually not too bad. He's somewhat in cover because of these trees, and the mangonels aren't accurate enough to hit his formation, so he'll just sit there drawing fire away from the rest of the army. Staying on the topic of explosives, I've got some hand mortars who annihilate an enemy unit coming in there. They'll be able to shoot over the battle lines and damage the enemy throughout the fight. As you can see, they just charged right at us, so now it's up to our samurai to hold the line. We have a hill advantage in most cases, and our troops are better than theirs. We're just outnumbered, but hopefully that won't be an issue. The plan is to just hack our way through all of these low quality troops man by man. Now we did have some issues on the right flank because some enemy generals came around and attacked where I didn't really have any defences, threatening my big guns. I had some Yariki in reserve who went to intercept them, and they'll do well against Generals Hatamoto, so that's okay for now. I also disabled their mangonels by deploying ninjas at the back of the map when the fight started, so they could rush up behind the enemy's army while hidden and now destroy the siege crew, so that's the threat from that removed. Now it's just a case of grinding our way through this front line. Lots of enemies by the looks of things, but they're not doing much damage to us. We're going to win all of the man-to-man fights and eventually get something good going there. Yoshishige ran over to help finish off the generals on that right flank, but he ran right into the path of my hand mortar attack. My hand mortars were left on fire at will and were shooting into the melee with my own men, and Yoshishige lost half of his guards due to that friendly fire attack. Was it deliberate perhaps from those troops? We'll never know, but at least he is still alive. So the right flank is very messy, and we did lose quite a lot of one of our gun crews out there, but the enemy took plenty of losses as well and are now relenting from that attack, so we just need to win the main one. The enemy's archers here were wasting their arrows shooting at my turcos and just doing no damage, and now our mortars get back into action doing something more productive by blowing them all up. Soon we start to see enemy units retreating, with more explosives greeting them as they try to get out. Now it's just a case of finishing off the survivors. We'll start to gain the advantage and can surround the remaining units and destroy them without too much trouble at this stage. That ends things then in a decisive victory. So a good start for Yoshishige in his bid to impress the clan and retain his nominal shogunship. And now we'll have to wait to see how Sugatsura can respond as he heads west to find glory and conquests of his own. We will of course be getting into all of that in the next episode. News of the invasion of Shikoku shocked the coalition. Their foe had the resources to prepare such a move even while achieving so much on the front lines. Spirits that were not dulled before became so quickly. They had a self-inflicted duty to fight the Otomo, but the war was hopeless. The bigger news from Shikoku did not reach them so quickly. The first Otomo shogun had died, and not only had the succession been contested, but Yoshiaki had actively encouraged a contest. Yoshishige was not guaranteed to receive the shogun's powers then, a snub that he happily ignored for a chance to wipe out any hint of doubt that Japan should not be his and his alone. That is it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and very special thanks to the Officially Devin patrons for making this happen. So we'll be carrying on with this special challenge, 2 armies, all of Shikoku to conquer, and whatever happens, happens, in the next episode of Barbarian Masters.